Good morning, everyone, and good day, good night, whenever you happen to be listening to this live stream. And I wanted to get this out. I've been working on a book, and I thought I almost had it done, but I'm gonna do some edits on this, and it deals with loss and grief and the many different forms of loss that we deal with, and we're dealing with some tremendous loss now. A lot of times we think of loss and grief as when you've lost a loved one to death. And I'm sorry if my lighting again. Um, so what a lot of people don't understand and is that loss can come in many forms. It can come from a loss of a career. It can come from a loss of a home. Uh, you can grieve the loss of a car. I mean, there's so many things that we deal with in loss that's not just a loss of life. Um, Loss of life, undoubtedly, the most difficult loss that you can deal with, and the most difficult form of grieving that you can deal with. If you've studied any kind of, I guess, psychology at all, um, delved into this subject at any level, you may be aware that there are five stages of grieving that humans generally go through. And it's not always, sometimes these blend together, but they're pretty much standard when we deal with loss and grieving. And these five stages were identified by an Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who was a psychiatrist that focused very heavily on near death and the process of dying. And it was in her book in 1969, the book was entitled On Death and Dying, that she revealed what is now referred to as the five stages of grief. And I'm going to go over those real quick, and we're going to talk about what we see a lot of grieving, and it's not just the loss of life, but there are people that have not been affected directly by this coronavirus as far as the disease of its concerned, but have experienced loss because the way we have reacted to this disease. And they go through these same steps. First of all, is denial. We've seen that all over social media, and we still do. A lot of people are still in a denial stage, and I can understand that. We could talk about that a little bit more as we go along, but let's identify these five basic steps of grieving. The first is always denial. It can't be. They're lying to us. We're overreacting. And that could be not just what we're dealing with in this virus, but if you go to a doctor and a doctor said you've got cancer, you're stage 4 cancer, and you've got 6 months to live, the first reaction is I misunderstood something. That's that's denial stage kicks in. It's like you must have had my results mixed with somebody else's, that sort of thing. Especially if you don't personally, it's like, I don't feel sick, I feel fine, and you're telling me I've got something that's going to kill me, and you go into a denial stage. It can be a loss of anything, a loss of the motor goes out on your car. All of a sudden, just horrible something mechanically goes wrong in your car. You go into, well, it's got to be something simple. So this first stage of grief is likely where you'll find yourself saying, this can't be happening. When you're completely overwhelmed by these intense emotions, the shock of an event can immediately send you into that state of denial. And during this state, you might feel as if life no longer has a genuine purpose. You might ask yourself whether there's even a point in continuing life at all. Part of you might even think that there's been a mistake. And we've seen that a lot, haven't we? In terms of pandemic, we might try to convince yourself that the media's overplayed the severity of it, has been reporting incorrect pieces of information, and you might be convinced that the virus isn't even real. I've heard that many times. or it's not as bad as it sounds, and that everything's just going to return to normal anytime. So we've seen that in this immediate situation over and over. That denial, stage one of grief. And then stage two leads to anger. So you begin to acknowledge that this is what's taking place. Now, with this virus, you may acknowledge there's several stages to what's going on. You may say, well, the virus is real, but we're overreacting. So the anger comes into, they're disrupting my life over something that's not as bad as they say. So the anger kicks in. The stage of anger is more emotionally intense, and it might cause you to develop anger toward the source of this event, which could be the government, it could be the Democrats, it could be the Republicans, it could be Trump, it could be any of these sources out there that you are throwing that anger out at. Essentially, you're just on the hunt for someone else to blame for what's happening. When it comes to this pandemic, there are plenty of different directions, as I just noted, that you can throw this anger out to. Anger at those not practicing social distancing. They're helping this spread. Can you see? I see those pictures of all these people at the beach or doing this. You might see your neighbors gathering together for a family thing in their yard, whatever. Anger at the government for not doing enough to stop the spread. Anger at the lack of availability of testing and the prevention of supplies and resources. Anger at doctors and nurses alerting you of a positive test result that you, after all this denial you've been into, you got it. You're tested positive. Anger that you can no longer go about your daily routine. That's the big one. That's one of the big ones right there. Anger about missing out on major life events, weddings, funerals, all the above. We get caught in these, what we call social norms, what we're used to doing. People don't deal with change very well. They have this comfort in their culture of the way we deal with this. And it's very difficult. So then we get into stage three, which is the bargaining stage. The bargaining stage is where you might experience intense feelings of regret. You catch yourself starting sentences with "if only," insinuating that there was something more that you or somebody else could have done to prevent it from happening in the first place. And we see this very clearly when we start pointing our fingers at China. And we see that in the political world a whole lot. In certain sections of politics, we hear that China. And so it's their fault. So, and then we start bargaining that. It involves a lot of focus on the past. And you wonder what could have been done differently in the past to keep this from happening. And you attempt to bargain some with God to make some sort of deal to fix it. Dear God, if you will straighten this out, I'll go to church every Sunday, or I'll quit smoking, or whatever that deal is. It's the bargaining stage. In reference to this pandemic, bargaining showed up in a lot of ways. You might focus on whether the spread could have been slowed sooner, events you missed out on could have been saved, or even if you had any fault in the spread of the pandemic. It goes in a lot of different directions, and people will get that feeling in different angles. Some will think, oh, I missed out on my wedding for no reason at all. This is overrated. So you start second guessing all this, and you get in that bargaining stages, the what if you will. In stage 4, we get into depression. The depression stage tends to last the longest, and it's usually the most emotionally draining stage of grief. And during this stage, you typically begin to acknowledge that what's happening is actually real, and you begin then to feel a profound sadness and guilt over this. You might begin to distance yourself from others emotionally and lose interest in your favorite activities and hobbies. You no longer enjoy socializing with others, and you just want to handle your emotions and thoughts on your own. Leave me alone. I'm going to deal with this. In the case of this pandemic, it's really common to feel a sort of depression when you realize how widespread the illness is and how many people are really suffering from it. But it's also not uncommon to feel depressed as a result of what's considered the new normal or the social isolation. It can, you're used to. It's a birthday party. It's it's that event. We're obsessed in our society with sports, missing out on sports activities, and you see those stages, and that focus is directed on what you personally are suffering the most upset about in regards to this whole picture. We're overreacting. It's not real. It's not as bad as they say it is. If we had just acted a little bit sooner, if we hadn't overreacted, all these things, then I wouldn't have missed out on Alabama football. I wouldn't have missed out on this. I could have had my wedding on the 16th of April. All those kind of things. Then we get into stage 5, which is acceptance. This final stage of grief. Not everybody will ever reach this stage. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're okay with what happened, but you finally accepted that it did happen and you're trying to move on from it. It's at this point that you're working to adapt to this new change in your life, and you begin to admit that things are no longer the way that they once were, and that you have to adapt to a new lifestyle because of what's taken place. And even though this pandemic is still going on, it doesn't mean acceptance cannot be reached. Acceptance in this case might be understanding that you have to stick to this new normal for a little while, or maybe from now on out, and that things will eventually return to normal soon, or they may not ever return to normal. That does happen. The losses that we felt during this pandemic, and see, what helps in going over this is identifying these stages and really focusing on your emotions. Stop looking outward and start looking inward so you can heal during this process, and you can figure out where you are in what's happening in the world around you. So the losses that we, in general, most of us, the whole world, in fact, have felt during this pandemic. Number one is the loss of freedom. We lived for almost 2 months in this lockdown situation. This freedom is practically non-existent. Restricted travel. You can't go here. You can't go there. No movies. No, like I said, sports. No gatherings of 10 people on social distancing or masks. All this stuff going on. It's a loss of freedom. It seems as if there's new rules and regulations for everything about life. Stores began limiting how many people can go inside. You got to go in a certain way. You can go down aisles in certain directions. One-way aisles, social distancing. You're paying for your items with this plexiglass. So, and you've seen actually probably by now that if you go to the store and the store's got capacity, they make you stand outside till somebody leaves. You probably experienced that. Your normal Saturday morning grocery store visit, suddenly a mad dash to quickly run in and run out with only the necessities. You no longer can bring the kids with you to the local playground when they begin to get very energetic. There's no more church on Sundays. There's no more catching up with friends over a few drinks at the local family-owned bar. There's no more dining out with family, friends, or even by yourself. Basically, any freedom you once took for granted suddenly disappeared, seemingly overnight. You know the limited freedom will ultimately curtail the spread of this virus. And see, this is some edits I'm going to do because not everybody agrees with that. Not everybody that's going through these stages of grief from these losses is going to ever agree that the steps we're taking or have been taking is preventing the spread of this virus. A lot of people think it's overplayed and still think that. We're still caught up in that stage right there. I don't believe that everybody's ever going to get to the point I think 20 years from now, people will still be saying, we overreacted to that crap. We screwed up the economy because of that. I honestly believe that there's still people going to be stuck in that stage. And regardless of where you are in that stage, it's still wearing you thin. It's still affecting your mood, regardless, because your freedoms, your life has changed. You can't just move like you're used to moving. You have to rethink everything you do. It feels as if you just going through motions of your new life, and every single day kind of begins to seem just a repeat of the other day. There's nothing new and exciting going on in your life, if you will. But there's some coping tips, and I've always would especially that when you are in these modes, find something to do. And in this case, you've got to find something that fits into this new normal. You shouldn't, you should not violate these quarantines and lockdown orders during a pandemic. You should take this seriously. You should get away from the feeling that this is some media blown out of proportion BS. You've got to realize that this is a worldwide event, that we're doing exactly what all these nations are doing. Nothing unique about what's going on in the United States. It's not something that's politically motivated. Our response to it could be politically motivated in some ways. I'll give you that. But there's some ways that you can deal with this grief that's associated with this loss of freedom. And here's a few things. So figure out how to incorporate some of your old hobbies into a new lifestyle. I've said, and I brought this up during these last several weeks, these couple of months. Now you've got time to finish that whatever. Now you've got time to focus on that whatever. You don't have to run out to a store. They'll bring the groceries to you. You don't have to go to Hobby Lobby. You can get it off Amazon. You can order off the internet. So even though you can't be with your friends, you just head to the store, certain stores especially, or go outdoors for the length of time. It doesn't mean that your old hobbies have to be dead and gone. From your own home, you can personalize equipment, watch videos to learn how to do things. The internet had to slow down a bit in my world. I've been using the internet daily throughout this whole thing. Set goals related to your hobby for when the pandemic is over, and find new hobbies. If you enjoyed hiking, fishing, or skiing, there's not much you can do about that right now outside. Engage in the hobbies that you can do outside. Yes, beaches may have been closed. Well, they're opened up now. So some things you do have to find new hobbies, because certain things you are going to be limited as to what you can do. You can learn arts and crafts. You've got stuff around your house. You've got stuff in your closet. You got stuff in your garage. It could be like Christmas time, going digging. Oh, I was going to do this. Look, I bought this and I never got into it. Time got away from me. I didn't even hardly open this package. You could get into writing. You could make videos like I'm doing right here, sitting in your house. And it don't have to be on a subject like this. You could be creating a family, memory, a time capsule, if you will, to share with your kids and grandkids. Hey, you can use that as something that's cathartic as well. It'll help you heal. You can sit there and talk to future generations. Hey, this is Kelsey. I'm sitting here on May the 26th, 2020, in the middle of this pandemic based on this COVID-19, this novel coronavirus. I'm not a scientist, but I want to share with you what's happening from my perspective in this time. I want to document this for you, the future generations down the road, so that you can have this firsthand account from one of your relatives. Maybe I'll never get to meet you. Maybe I'll be long gone before you were ever born, but at least you can get to know me and know where you came from and know what your family experienced and have some personal feeling to things maybe you've heard about 2020 and how awful it was this year. And then you can express what you went through. I wasn't able to work for months. The government sent us $1,200. That wasn't anything. We had to, it was a dramatic change in our lives. And as I was sitting going through this, I had to find something to occupy my time with and try to be as positive as possible because I didn't want to get depressed. I didn't want to lose touch with reality. So I wanted to document my feelings here and create this time capsule. That's one profound way to do it. You can also make a gratitude list. You're sitting around thinking about all the things that you're missing out on, but with a gratitude list, you can write down the things that you're grateful for and focus on what you do have. And see, I've got a problem with that because I've done a lot of weddings and I belong to some wedding groups on Facebook. And all these wedding vendors are keep promoting this and keeping in your face what you're missing out on, what you're missing out on. It's like, sorry, you've had to postpone your wedding. If they shifted that into a positive paradigm, if they shifted that into you've got time to work on your marriage, you've got time to work on your relationship. Maybe your relationship's good, but you got time to make it even better. You've got time to plan. You've got time to set priorities. You've got time for each other. You got time for all these things. So you don't have to feel pressured by a date right now. So think about the positive. What can I learn from this experience? What can I walk away with and then share with my future generations? What good can come out of this? If you're into social media, make and share memes. Laughter is good medicine. It's truly cathartic. These days, there's memes for everything. The coronavirus memes are particularly good. You can Google for memes or browse Reddit for memes and share them on your social media. Get a laugh, have fun, make it entertaining. You don't have to be going anywhere to dress up nice. Women especially love going through their closet and trying on their clothes, dress up day. And then take your selfies. Have fun with that. It helps with your mental state. You may not be able to go to a hairdresser, get your nails done perfectly good. But clean up, get a shower, try on clothes, look in the mirror, put some makeup on, whatever. Have fun, dress up day. Go back to your little childhood and say, oh, I want to have dress up day. Enjoy it. Strut around the house. Do your own fashion show. Again, you can stream it on social media and have fun with it, or you can just do it at home for your own edification. Commiserate. If you're having a bad day, you're not alone. Be open with your friends, your family. Schedule a time to commiserate. Cry on each other. You don't have to be next to them. You can do it FaceTime, on the phone, whatever. Share your feelings immediately with those to help you get through this. Then, if you need to, talk about how much you miss your favorite restaurant. Allow yourself to heal through that process so that you can move on to the next step. Again, go back. What's that project you got you never started? Dig through that closet. What did you buy 5 years ago? You never opened. It's like you saw it. You were at Michael's or Walmart or whatever. It's like, ooh, I would like to do this. You just never took the time. A little artsy thing or whatever it was. That's some project in your garage you're going to work on. Now you got time. Start the project you never had time for. We've all had those projects in the back burner. We've always wanted to learn to code, to write a book, to paint the garage, or start a business. So, a new way of approach. What business could I start? I've got this new situation. I was doing weddings, I was doing events, bam, it shut down. From the comfort of my home, there's a lot of people making money that never leave home. A lot of people are sitting at home making money. I'll give you an example. Guy that's into the paranormal, Steve Huff. He calls himself Huff Paranormal. Rarely does he leave home. Usually in the middle of the night, he's creating these videos, sitting in the comfort of his home. He's put together these gadgets, really fancy with lights and all this. And he's supposedly using this spirit box to talk to the dead. He's a performer. He's got 1 million followers. He's raking it in. When somebody famous dies, within 2 or 3 days, he's having a conversation with them on a spirit box. I'm not encouraging you to mimic him. You may not be in the paranormal. I'm not saying the 1 million followers of him even believe it's real. Some think it's just entertainment. That's fine. But you can find your niche. You can start a YouTube channel. And that's not the only way you can go. A lot of people just stream live on Facebook. I'm using a platform here to where I stream live at the same time on Facebook and YouTube. So this, what you're watching now, ends up in both places. You've got time to research. How can I make money from doing that? It could be about the subject of quarantine. You can share your thoughts about the quarantine. It could be like, I really trying to understand what's going on. It just yesterday, we were just locked down. We were at home. They were telling us, first of all, don't wear a mask, then wear a mask. And then everything's locked down. And then just overnight, they open everything up. But yet, according to the numbers, nothing's flatlined. The virus is still growing. The deaths are still happening. Why is it just all of a sudden like, how's this confusing you? Have these conversations. It's going to open up dialogue. You can look at where people are posting responses to your video. And you can go from there. How do you think some of these people got started? Just by starting a vlog, video, not a blog, but a vlog. So you start, there's no cost in doing a YouTube channel. You can make that dream come true. Put a camera. You can do it live stream. You can video it, edit it, and polish it up, and do it pre-recorded. Do it for the views. Do it for yourself. It doesn't matter. Create a new routine. Even if your old routine worked like a charm, you're going to have to create a new one. Things have changed. So create a new one. Change is a good thing, not a bad thing. Progress is a good thing, not a bad thing. Many aspects of our old lives are no longer possible, but you got to press on. Routine is important to humans. So we need to try to keep some kind of a routine up. If you're used to start your day with a workout at Starbucks, do your workout at home and make your own coffee. If you like to go to a bar on the weekend, make a video chat with all your friends and have a drink as you're chatting with them online. Popular platform for that is Zoom, and now Facebook is giving Zoom a run for their money. You probably noticed it on your timeline there. When all this seems lost, focus on the light at the end of the tunnel. All things do, as we know, come to an end. So your shelter in place will be lifted. Businesses will reopen. We've seen that now. Just be prepared. It's bound to happen again. It's happened before. This is not the first time. Maybe it's the first time in your life, but it's not the first time it's happened. This is why it's important to, if nothing else, take the time to create a video like I'm doing now, expressing what you went through, what your family, firsthand account of what you're dealing with and your feelings in regards to this pandemic and our reaction to it and so forth. It'll help future generations, especially in your family, to know and what to expect and to know how to deal with it. A lot of people are sitting there, and I've seen it, saying, we've never dealt with a pandemic in this fashion. We've never shut down the schools. But we have. Think of the Spanish flu just 100 years ago. This is a repeat of history. So everything in life is temporary. Everything in life is temporary. Life itself is temporary. Be real with yourself to help you deal with anything that comes up in your life. It helps you to deal with the loss in the future, not just with what we're going through with this pandemic, but any losses that you may have. All life ends. The number one cause of death is birth. Everything that you deal with has a shelf life. Some things have a shelf life that are far greater than your life is going to be. Some things have a shelf life that's far shorter than your life is going to be. From our perspective, we don't necessarily see the shelf life of everything that we recognize in the universe. If you walk away from your house or your car, you let it sit, in a short period of time, you'll see nature taking these things back over, because that's what happens. It's a recycling. Then we get down to the greatest loss of all that we experience, and that's the loss of people, of loved ones, of people we know. It doesn't even have to be a close person. It could be somebody we worked with. It could be just somebody we know. We're affected by the loss of some entertainer that we never personally know, but they were part of our lives because we experienced them through their art, the art of acting, or their whatever they were engaged in as a performer, an entertainer, an artist. So we're touched even by their loss, even though we never personally dealt with them, may have not ever even met them. This loss of people can also be in reference to this lack of socialization that you permitted to partake in. Rather than hanging out with friends, going to parties and gatherings, and just encountering others in the supermarket, you're now isolated. You're now alone. It sometimes feels like you're pure isolation mode and that you're just trapped with yourself. All you have left is your pets and those who live in your household. And even that doesn't feel like enough sometimes. And sometimes it leads to us getting on each other's nerves. This can be worse for those who live alone. You're craving human interaction, but you know that it's best to keep your distance until the pandemic is no longer needed or no longer around. You never realized how much you valued face-to-face human interaction until it was taken away, until it was gone. So what can we do to cope with these things? Well, the wonderful thing is in today's world, we have some tools to make it easier to cope with. In today's world, we're, as they say, blessed. So there's nothing we can do to sit actually face to face. There's things that we can do to minimize the sadness and loneliness that we're feeling without others physically by our side. So what can we do? We grieve. If someone you cared about has died, start the grieving process. That's part of it. Don't deny your feelings. Cry. Write that journal. Create a support system. Work on maintaining your relationships, your existing relationships. Just because you can't see them face to face doesn't mean that you still can't reach out to them. Phone call, text, email, video chat. Think of the tools we've got that they didn't have in 1918. They make a difference in improving your mood. You're down today, you get a hold of somebody over here that you've known for a long time or a relative, they pick you up. That's what friends do for each other. You're having a bad day, call me. I'll pick you up. When I'm having a bad day, I'll call you. You lift me up. Express your feelings. Tell people you love them. During these times, it's easier and more clearly to understand how short life really is. Make an effort to reach out to these people that you have a fondness for, that you're close to, that are part of your lives, that maybe you've neglected. Let them know how much you care about them and how important they are to you. Then Another step, play pretend. Millions of people around the globe are having a blast pretending to do things they used to do. They'll have club nights with friends via Zoom. They'll order takeout and pretend like they're at a restaurant. Even some people who make classic works of art with everyday objects. There's no wrong way to do it. Channel your creativity and play act what you wish you could do. There's a sense of comfort knowing that you have some control in your life. This lack of control is a great loss in and of itself. You're responsible for your own successes, your own failures, and ultimately what happens in your own little world around you. In the case of this pandemic, nothing is in your control the way it was. You have somebody telling you what you can do, what you can't do. It's not, you don't like it. Nobody likes it. Some people are bucking the system. How much distance you've got to have between you and another person? Don't hug that person. Don't shake that person's hand. What store can you go to? You don't have control over this whole pandemic at all. People around you are suffering from an illness, and there's absolutely nothing that you can do about it. You've got to learn to be okay with waiting it out and leaving it up to the powers that be. In a way, you'll feel hopeless and very powerless. You feel as if you're the one that's supposed to be the protector of your friends and family. But that's completely out of your control at this moment. So how do I deal with those feelings, that loss of control? Even though you can't stop a pandemic and there's other things that can create that loss of control, that you personally can't stop it, other than certain basic things, there's a few things that'll help you along the process of grieving in this world where you no longer have any control. Focus on what you can control. The truth is the outside world, the pandemic, the doctors, politicians, and restrictions are all beyond your control. The only thing you can control is your attitude, your mindset, and yourself. The only thing you control is how you react to those things. So that's what you need to focus on. There's always a bright side to everything. Consider all the good things about being stuck at home. God, every Monday morning, oh God, I gotta get up and go to work. Just Monday morning, you didn't have to get up and go to work. There's a lot of people working from home now that never had that opportunity. Their job is paying them to stay home. You no longer have commute time. You don't have to get groomed in any particular way to do your work at home. It's a liberty. It's a different world, but think of the positives of that. You have time to do things that you normally can't do because you're at work. Consider it as a gift. Make the best out of it, and your newfound attitude will see you through this. Help those that need it. In these trying times, it might make you feel more control and better about yourself by giving back to your community. Excuse me. You might want to think about donating blood, offering to deliver groceries to your elderly neighbors, or donate masks and medical gear to local hospitals. Mow the next door neighbor's lawn. There's always something you can do for your neighbors, for your community. Then learn to let it go. Oh, it's easy to say, just let it go, but it's really not that easy to do, is it? And sometimes it's all you can do when things are out of control. Other than minor things you can do to help prevent the virus from spreading, the best way to rid yourself of this grief, this anxiety, and stress is by realizing it's completely out of your hands. From a religious aspect, people do this all the time. The ones that claim to have found God will always tell their testimony about how their lives got better once they realized that they were not in control. They turned it over to God. And it gave them a certain amount of freedom. And you've heard these kind of testimonies, religious or not, there's something to be said. If you don't believe in God, you say, I'm turning this over to the universe. It's just beyond my control. It's wearing me down trying to control it. It's wearing me down trying to deal with this. So we'll let it go. Religious people do this all the time. Religious people gain their most freedom, they say, by just turning it over to their God. How many times you've heard that testimony? Turn off your TVs. Turn off Fox News, MSNBC, CNN. You know, if you want to kind of stay up to date, just get online and kind of see what's happening. Don't get bogged down with it. Sometimes it's just too heavy. It can be scary. And people are scary. They share these articles. They become addicted to refreshing news feeds. And they get in this trap. And it just is totally constant negative. So the news, social media is hurting your mental health. Unplug it. My God, humans survived for tens of thousands of years without any of this stuff. You can too. You can still use the internet for positive things, like what I'm doing here, without going through this, because there's always going to be somebody out there just pounding in one side or the other about a political view or something like that. If it's overwhelming to you, if you get caught up in that, hit the ignore button and still use this as a tool. Use the internet to stream on Netflix or Hulu or YouTube. There's enough stuff on YouTube to keep you entertained for longer than you'll ever be alive. So if you find the news or social media is hurting your mental health, unplug it. Get it off your cell phone. There's little you can do about the outside world. The only thing you can control is yourself. Then this isn't permanent. And also, as you do that, prepare for future situations. Maybe it's not going to be a pandemic. Maybe it's going to be a tornado, hurricane, or something else that's going to disrupt your life. But nothing's permanent. Even though we don't know what it's going to look like when all this is over, your lack of control over your life will not last forever. So it's best to remind yourself that this is only temporary and it will eventually change. Then there's those like me, loss of work. Oh, I went through the 5 stages of grief. It affected my life dramatically. Only essential businesses. Now we see this opening up, but this is still very important because we don't know what's going to happen another month, 2 months. Some are predicting that this isn't over. There's going to be a second wave, or it's going to be another peak in this. They may have to shut it down again for our own good. I don't know. But being aware of these things can help you make changes in your life to deal with this more effectively. So we've dealt with only essential businesses being open, other businesses being closed down temporarily, and some permanently. We find that a lot of people are without work. Our unemployment numbers have skyrocketed and higher than they have been in decades. So how are we going to support our families? Well, we kind of talked about that a little bit before, didn't we? What we're going to do, developing a new way to generate our revenue. Financial struggles are stressful. It's one of the most stressful things we deal with in our modern society. Having no other employment options it's devastating. Rather than sending applications to new companies, we're stuck at home waiting for new opportunities to come our way. If you still don't have a job, you might be forced to work from home and have your hours and your pay cut substantially. Suddenly the comfortable life you once lived no longer exists, and you're desperately waiting for things to recover. You're wondering whether you're going to have enough to pay for the mortgage, to put food on the table, to pay the bills. And you've got the grief of loss of job, and possible fear of loss of home, food, especially. And this is even worse when you have a family that depends on you. How do you cope with all that? There's a lot of grief associated with losing work. And it comes down to waiting it out and having hope that things will repair themselves quite quickly. But here's some other things that can help you through this grieving process. Remember that it wasn't your fault. Don't carry this burden on your back. You did not do anything wrong to get fired, to lose your job. It wasn't your fault. You're responsible for supporting your family financially. Your job loss has nothing to do with your job performance. It's completely out of your control, and it doesn't make that you a failure. You're not a failure. You get to spend more time with your family. It's terrible that you lost your job, but now's the time to lean on your loved ones for support. Rather than isolating yourself and focusing your energies on sadness, enjoy this extra time you have currently to spend with your loved ones. Realize that there are people to help. It might be against everything you believe in, but there are organizations and people there that are willing to help those who have been impacted by sudden job loss. It's okay to lean on that. A lot of major churches and organizations have had these food banks and that sort of thing. Dig around. Crowdfunding. Many families created a GoFundMe page where people can go donate to their cause. It's not appropriate for everyone, but you can visit the site. There's not the GoFundMe is not the only way to do that. There's even a way on Facebook to do that. But don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be ashamed to ask. There are people that have more than you. There are people that can help. We've lost the world as we know it. Everybody in the world's getting used to what's called the new normal. Essentially, basically, the entire world's forced to adapt to this new change that's been implemented in order to keep the pandemic to a minimum. It's safe to say that the world will never be the way it was before the pandemic struck. That can be a good thing. There's likely to be new rules and legislations, different methods of providing health care, and even guidelines for how we handle new illnesses. But right now, the entire world is basically at a standstill. Your travel's limited. Businesses worldwide have shut their doors, may never reopen. You can't do the things you once did without a single second thought. And there's a lingering sense of fear. But it's important to remember that it's all temporary. These measures are taking place to protect public health and also to prevent a huge overload on the healthcare system. So what can we do to cope with this? We can't change the world. There's nothing we can do to change how the world is viewed and how the world functions as a whole in the future. What we can do is learn to be accepting of new change. That is hard for a lot of people. But here's some ways you can do that. Make a list, the worst case list. One thing that positive thinkers and optimists do is they've always consider it can be worse scenario. So, for example, we could be in a full-blown war. I could have cancer. I could be homeless. There could be no scientists working on a cure or a vaccine. There could be no caring officials working on ways to keep us safe. Consider the much worse off people who've already died from COVID-19 or who have suffered the illness, even if they've recovered. It's horrible. And consider their families. You're still alive. These thoughts and the processes in these thoughts help you to see the things that are not as bad as they seem and could be much worse, especially in your case. Be resilient. Choose to be resilient. Resilience is based on the fact that previous struggles serve to help you in current ones. And this is where we learn from our experiences. There's thousands of people who suffered in far worse ways than a temporary change of lifestyle. And so for them, it's easy to take all this with inner strength and resilience, knowing that since they've overcome so many struggles and obstacles in their life, they can overcome this. There's people that's been victims of crimes. There's those that suffered child abuse, divorce struggles, breakups, living in their car at some point. The list goes on and on. Consider your past struggles and how you survived. What can you learn from those struggles and how can it make you Reminisce. You might be too depressed to think back to your past right now, but give it a go. Think about the most traumatic things that have happened to you in your life or in the world that you thought you'd never get through. Things were different before and after those events, but you survived and became a better person because of it. And put your life into perspective. It's completely normal to feel overwhelmed and stressed about minor conveniences in your life. But situations like those really make you put things in perspective. If anything, this might help you to realize that those minor problems in your life aren't all that big to deal with at all. And very important, be open to change. So we all get this comfort thing going. You like the way it was. You like the way it is. That's understandable. That's most people. But change is a part of life. Look in a mirror and look at a picture of what you were 20 years ago. Change is a part of life. You cannot stop change. Even though you don't know what changes are up ahead of you, you need to learn to be okay with them happening and take it as it comes. Change is also the perfect time to build your inner strength, your resilience, your perseverance, and your positive thinking skills. And these can be great gifts. These can be the silver linings in your life. Loss of plans. There's so many levels of loss that you could suffer from. Nearly every event of the next few months has been canceled. We've dealt with this since March, April. You're basically stuck at home without any long-term plans. Perhaps you had travel plans. Now, making matters worse, the events, maybe even bought tickets, or maybe you booked in a place for a wedding or whatever. Got to be rescheduled. What about all these entertainers that had concerts lined up around the world canceled? Starting with the basics, you no longer have school or work to look forward to, and even your co-workers and some of your classmates that worked with you, it's all been shut down. Schedules are hectic. The school workplace has been shut down indefinitely. You don't know when these things are going to be opened up. It can be very uncomfortable. Special events that were scheduled to call off. No weddings, parties. There's no small gatherings of family and friends, and there's absolutely no wakes or memorials to celebrate the lives of those we've lost. Funerals are even different. Big events, graduations, proms are no longer part of the American education system. Vacations have been canceled, and just sometimes it seems like everything you're looking forward to is gone. There's nothing left to keep you going. How do you cope with that? Even though you have to follow these new rules, if you don't want the virus to continue to spread, and they're just not allowed legally, it's totally normal to grieve the loss of the things that you planned for, that you look forward to. You can't even go to Disney World. Can you imagine Disney World, Disneyland closing down? Make long-term goals, even though you might not know when you'll actually be able to do these things. To have that wedding or the family vacation doesn't mean that you can't continue to have the goals. It's called a bucket list. Make some long-term goals of places you want to visit or things you'd like to do when all this comes to an end. You don't have to put a date on it. Remove the timeline. You want to fulfill your plans when they were scheduled, but that's no longer possible because it's a shutdown. So look forward to the event being rescheduled sometime in the future. And don't put a time limit on when that has to happen. So you can't go to Disney. It doesn't mean you can't do anything fun around the house. There's even a guy that built a roller coaster of sort for his little child. You've seen that, I'm sure, on the internet. Have family game night. Play some video games. Exercise as a family. Consider the most important bottom line. This is what you really got to get down to here. You're alive. You're well. And that's the most important things. And knowing that, then it's time to help those who are really suffering. This is the direction my book's going in. And this is kind of highlighting. That's not even quite half of the book. But I want to share that to give people on this day a little thought about what they're dealing with and having dealt with. We're all dealing with losses right now. So I hope that's been of some help. Look for my book coming out on how we can all deal with these things better. We can overcome these losses. We can overcome and grieve as a normal process. We can find things to do that are cathartic, that help us individually. Look at me. I don't have to wear a suit. It's time to re-engage your life in a new way. Okay, I'm back. I had a internet hiccup at 4:45 in the morning here at home. But how many times in your life, or you have heard at least someone, they reach a point in their lives that say, I wish I could just wipe the slate clean and start all over again. I'm sure if you haven't said that, you've heard somebody say it, or you felt like saying it, right? The slate has basically been wiped clean at this point. You are in a position to start your life brand new. It's okay to reinvent yourself. It is. It's okay to reinvent yourself. It's okay to redesign who you are as an individual. You don't even have to change your peripheral. You can live in the same house, the same neighborhood, whatever, but you can change who you are. You can redefine yourself. Take away the positive from this. My book will be published soon. That's a brief overview, but dealing with these losses, identifying these losses, what are you going through? And this is good material, not just for what we're going through with the pandemic, but any losses in life. People lose jobs all the time, regardless of a pandemic. People lose careers, people lose homes, people lose cars, people lose family, they lose their health, things change. Even when there's not a pandemic, businesses close their doors, go bankrupt, and through no fault of yours, you lose your career. You've got to start over. Maybe you become homebound, but you still got to figure out a way to generate money. Loss can come in many forms. My book will be forthcoming. That is just a general overview of what you're going to find in my book, dealing with loss and grief and the grieving process. So look forward to that. It's going to be on Amazon.com, and I'm working on that, honestly, as I speak. Have a good Tuesday, and don't forget tonight, 7 p.m. live stream right here on Facebook, except Abnormal Alabama, 7 p.m. Central Time, Abnormal Alabama on Facebook and on YouTube. And if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, Abnormal Alabama, get over there and get it done. Thank you, and have a good day.